Hey y'all, and welcome back to my channel. In this tutorial, we're going to be taking a 20-ounce full vinyl wrap and putting it on a 32-ounce plump from TIPSY Magnolia. These Halloween spooky vinyl wraps are incredibly detailed and vibrant from Slide Hustle. And the first thing that you're going to want to do is trim off any of that excess white around the edges and square everything off. I'm going to double check to make sure that this is going to fit around my tumbler properly. We're going to cut off a little excess of the backing and then use the hinge method to apply this to the tumbler. Susan from Slide Hustle always wants to make sure that everything is going to be proportional, so she even reached out to me on this and made sure that the dimensions were correct and this was going to fit perfectly around the tumbler so we get a really nice seam and it's not cutting off any of our images. So we just have a very small overlap. I'm going to go straight down the center of that using some painter's tape and remove the excess that's over top and underneath. We are going to use a chameleon pigment powder, so I'm not concerned to spray paint the base. It is super pigmented, so there is absolutely no need. We're just going to tape everything off with painter's tape, and then we'll use my favorite glue from Southern Belle Glitter for our pigment powder application. Once we have a thin, even coat of our full glue on, I'm going to dry it up with a heat gun. This glue dries tacky, and it is super tacky, so you don't need a ton, especially when you are just using micas or pigment powders. And then we're going to use Rango from PDB Creative Studio and just brush that on with our finger. You can definitely open this all the way up and use a paintbrush, just a soft bristle brush, and dust that on the cup as well if you don't want to make a mess and use your hands. I'm going to remove the painter's tape, go ahead and seal this in with Rust-Oleum Matte Clear Coat. I'm just going to give it 2 thin coats, go in with 2 coats of epoxy, and then we'll be ready to add on our pinstriping. Now in my first coat of epoxy, I added a little more of this pigment powder into my epoxy, just a tiny bit so I can give an overall shimmer and a little bit of a shift to our images. For our pinstriping, we're going to be using the rose gold textured metallic vinyl from TeckWrapcraft and this new holographic red bubble-free vinyl. It matched the tumbler perfectly. There's a little bit of red that pops in the stained glass, and I thought this was just a perfect vinyl to pair with that to try to pull everything together and give a little more pop at the top and bottom. I cut 4 of each size, and the sizes that I used was 0.10 by 11.5 inches. Then I did 0.08 by 11.5 inches, 0.05 by 11.5 inches, and then a 0.03 to go right down the seam. And I torched on that first coat. I got a little too crazy with my torch, so it lifted my vinyl just a hair in the seam. So we're just going to cover that up with the vinyl and blend it in with the rest of the pinstriping. Once I had all of my pinstripes made at the sizes that I just told you, I highlighted them all and created a 0.035 offset. My originals are the textured metallic, and then the offsets is the red holographic. You want to press that vinyl down really, really well to make sure that it's not going to lift up whenever you go in with your epoxy. If your tumbler is glossy like mine and does not have any sand marks, you can absolutely seal everything in with a Rust-Oleum matte clear coat. Once your spray paint has dried, you can go in with your 2 final coats of epoxy. I always use 2 final coats because it reassures that I have additional protection on top of any of my images or vinyl. So if it's tapped or bumped up against anything, it's not going to crack in those weaker areas. My epoxy of choice is a little extra incorporated turbo for my first layer, and then I will use regular for the second. This is a incredibly high shine epoxy, and it is a thinner to medium viscosity, so I love using it especially for my final coats because it keeps the layers thin so my tumblers aren't really bulky. Now, I've had a couple questions about humidity and temperature changes since we're kind of going into fall and all of those are changing. This is an epoxy that I have found that is not very temperamental. I have used it in lots of different environments. Our humidity can get 100% here in North Carolina, and then I have used it in a space where I don't have any heat. Temperatures have been well below 60 and it has performed just as well. Just may take a little bit longer to cure. If, for example, I'm mixing 10 milliliters, this is a 1-to-1 ratio epoxy, so I will take part B, which is the thinner of the two, put 5 milliliters in my measuring cup, and then go in with 5 milliliters of part A, and that will bring the level up to 10 milliliters where you want to be, and really helps avoid getting that off ratio resulting in a tacky cup. I have some fresh bottles of ALE coming soon, and I will do a full review and tutorial on how I mix and apply my epoxy and remove any micro bubbles. So stay tuned for that. But for now, let's just admire how awesome this tumbler turned out. I hope that y'all enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. I'll answer as quickly as possible. All materials I have used will be down in the description with some discount codes. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time.